Good evening and or morning and or solstice, scumbags. My name is Andrew Fantasia, and I'm joined by
Rob McDonald.
welcome Rob McDonald, welcome one and all to the Senate building for a big ass vote of no confidence that is going to rock the foundations of Star Wars as we know it, brother. WrestleMania.
Oh yeah, we're going completely wrestling. This is a wrestling vote of no confidence today. I think.
The face with several pieces of furniture before it's all said and done. And maybe some of you too, because we're going to be talking today about something that a lot of people have argued constantly since December 2015. Tell us what that is, Rob.
Well, it is simply Force Awakens, and the whole time, is it a copy? Is it a clone of A New Hope?
Is Force Awakens a clone of New Hope? Now that's something like that is there's literally there's sort of like armies on either side. If you
Clone armies, if you may say.
yeah, clone armies. If you dive into any internet chat room, I mean there are armies for either side. So either way, you and I are going to have backup no matter what side we're debating.
Yeah, don't attack us. If you're on the other side, don't attack us on the other side. Like, we're just fighting for it in this scenario.
So
and
tell us are voting for here.
So I am on the side of no, it is not a clone of.
And I have been given the side of yes, The Force Awakens is in fact a clone of A New Hope.
Nope.
So
nope.
start us off.
All right. So yeah, I'm going to simply start off. Obviously there are plenty of things that, let's just say, are taken from A New Hope, like in terms of story points and whatnot. But Force Awakens, in a lot of ways, is really its own movie because the thing about it is that we came in a time where it was like the prequel movies, and it's like, oh, I don't like those things. So many people were not fans of it. A lot of people were. I'm not going to say that it's not, because there certainly were a lot of fans of the prequels, but it came in a time where it was like, hey, Star Wars is back. Star Wars has been reacquired. Sorry, has been acquired by Disney, and we have to make people nostalgic for Star Wars. So they brought in these points where it's like, hey, BB-8, is a lot like R2's role in New Hope. Several other things are very similar to it, but at the same time, it was opening a door for something new entirely. Just telling a completely different story with. Well, not completely different, but at least compared to the original trilogy, a completely different story with Kylo Ren in terms of just introducing these new characters like Rey, Finn, and Poe, and just bringing you these new characters that you could love and enjoy, and that you could really get attached to, and just feeling Star Wars again. Is it a nod or a homage to that movie? Yes, but at the same time, it does stand on its own.
Well, here's the thing, Mr. Rob McDonald.
Tell me the thing.
As we say in the wrestling ring, here's the thing, brother. I'm going to teach you a thing or two. Yes, The Force Awakens is a clone of A New Hope. However, it absolutely should have been. And that is a good thing. I mean, when people talk about it being a clone, it's always in the negative aspect, and like how it's, oh, it's a carbon copy, blah, 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 blah. This movie needed to be a clone of A New Hope, because when you look at Star Wars, I mean, it is, I was going to use the word arguably, but I don't even think it needs to be argued. Star Wars is the most densely packed story ever told. There's so much friggin' stuff going on. That's why we have books and comics and young adult novels and rub-on tattoos and all that shit. There's so much happening. And when you look at all that stuff, there is no real point of entry for it except for A New Hope, which was 40 years ago. I mean, Phantom Menace might have a big old one in the title, but Phantom Menace, it takes a lot of heady concepts like the Force and Jedi and Yoda, and it just kind of brushes them off like they ain't no thing. It's like, yep, this is a thing. It's not a good place, even though it's called Episode 1, it's not a good place to introduce someone to the series for that reason alone, which means that the only jumping on point that we have, like I said, is a 40-year-old movie called A New Hope. The Force Awakens, I mean, talk about an unenviable task. As much as I would love to have worked on that movie, I would not have wanted to work on that movie because of the fine line it had to walk. It had to be a jumping on point for new fans, and it needed to further expand this mythology. Otherwise, old fans like us are going to be like, well, that didn't give us anything new. It needed to please old fans and make new ones, and it did that. After December 2015, there were more Star Wars fans than ever before. I know a girl that I used to work with, and she was a cool girl. She had never touched a Star Wars movie once. She was just like, yeah, like we were talking about like what we like and stuff, and I was like, well, I like the Star Wars. I think those are pretty cool movies. And she was just like, yeah, I got to be honest with you. I don't touch Star Wars. That's just not my thing. I've never seen one. And I was talking to her a few weeks after Force Awakens opened because she's a fashion designer, and I sent her a picture of Rey's outfit. I said, I know you don't watch Star Wars, but this is a girl from the new Star Wars movie. I wanted you to tell me what you think of her outfit because I think it's a really cool design for a costume, and she loves design and stuff like that. And when she responded to my message, she said, she goes, actually, I saw The Force Awakens. My friend coaxed me into seeing it, and she goes, I got to be honest, I thought it was really damn cool. She goes, like, when's the next one coming out? And this is coming from a person who would never touch Star Wars again. I mean, if this had been The Phantom Menace, she wouldn't have been saying that. And not as a mark against Phantom Menace, like in the usual prequel sense. I'm just saying The Phantom Menace would not have been the right gateway drug for her. This walked that line, and it did it the right way. And it needed to be like A New Hope because it needed to be point of entry. It needed to be accessible without being dumbed down. And damn, did they ever pull that off.
Well, yeah, so we get into an interesting debate here because, again, like, I do not view this as a clone in any way. Like, in a lot of ways, like, what Force Awakens is doing is it's kind of taking like the skeleton of A New Hope. I think it's taking a lot of the points, like story points, reattaching new characters, reattaching this story about where the heck Luke Skywalker is, which is really the through line of the entire movie, and then adding all this stuff, adding the meat, adding the stuff that, again, like the thing that you pointed out was that your friend loves this new movie, but my mom is like that too, and my friend Jason, who's like that too, where he didn't care that much for the original movies, and then all of a sudden this movie comes out, and then this is their movie, this is their Star Wars movie that they just seem to love, and that's a lot to do with that because, like, again, you take the skeleton of that, but then you add on this other stuff, which seems to be what's really pulling this newer audience in. These characters, the effects, all that type of stuff seem to really be pulling everybody in. See, the thing is that why I'm describing this as a skeleton thing is that I had a discussion with a friend recently, and he were talking about how Pixar movies, in a lot of ways, they're kind of the same story, like, for the most part. It's like their characters get lost or go somewhere, and then they have to get home. A lot of ways, that's a lot of like the setup for all of them. Like Toy Story, Inside Out has a lot of that. The new Coco movie has that. They're doing that, but then they're creating new characters. They're creating specific things that make you latch on, that are new, that make you really connect to it and want to see more of it. Because, again, if it was just a complete clone of that, then it might as well be just a remake. It might as well be like that the Vince Vaughn's Psycho movie, like the Gus Van Sant one, where it's literally almost like a shot-for-shot remake of the original one. So at that point, it's like, what's the point? You're literally just remaking New Hope. Force Awakens is not a remake of New Hope. It is taking the skeletal structure again of it and then applying something new and creating something new at the same time. So that's what I would have to say is my second point in general, is that, like, it's not a clone, it's an inspiration. It's a skeletal structure of what A New Hope is.
Well, another thing that The Force Awakens needed to be, that sometimes we lose track of, is that it needed to set the stage for the fact that Star Wars is coming back, but it's going to be different. Star Wars is a kind of there's something unique about it in that it adheres to a formula. There is a very unique Star Wars formula that all 6 previous movies have all, like, they've stuck to it like glue. I mean, and we've talked about it endless times. Like, there's the whole, first of all, there's like the obvious stuff like the wipes and the crawl and whatnot. But then you also have the whole thing where it's like Star Wars has never done flashbacks. Star Wars has never done like large jumps in time within one movie, etc. Little things like that. That has just always been quintessentially Star Wars, and there's nothing wrong with those formulas at all. I mean, I'm a creature of habit. I like tradition, but Disney knew going into this that, okay, we have 6 movies of this formula. If we make 6 more with the same formula, people are going to be bored. People are going to say that, Star Wars doesn't go anywhere. Star Wars is just a static thing that just keeps repeating itself. And as much as I agree with George Lucas, how there's something poetic about it, like the infamous line that he always says, it's like poetry. They rhyme with each other. There has to be a point where you move forward and you create a new stanza. Otherwise, your poem is just like that weird beat poetry where people just do spoken word, and it's like, this is weird and I don't like it. Disney was going into, okay, we're making something different. We're making the next generation of Star Wars and we're moving forward. But they understood that we can't do this right at the outset. We can't bring out episode 7 right away and then it's like all of a sudden, here comes Force Awakens and there's friggin' time travel and no crawl and people are dropping the F-bomb and it's R-rated. Like, they can't do that because people would have been so jarred. The shock to the system would have been like damaging almost. And then you would have had a plethora of people who would, like, pretty much everybody who would have seen it would have said, this isn't Star Wars. This isn't my Star Wars. Disney ruined it. Screw you, Disney. And they would have walked away from the whole thing. The prequels followed the classic formula and they still got hate. So imagine what the fanboy reaction would have been directed towards Disney if Disney had just come along and been like, here's this new thing that's so friggin' different and it doesn't even feel like Star Wars anymore. We had been away for a decade. Like, we needed to come back to it the way we remember, just for one movie, just to reacquaint ourselves, bring it back into our lives, get that blood flowing again. And now that it's here, we can crank it up to 11. And now that we have that taste again, now we can be like, okay, what else does this thing do? It's like this, like Speed Racer's car. Like, we know it can flip around, we know it can drive fast, we've seen it do that before. What does this button do?
Yeah, the whole this what button do? It's like Men in Black with the little red button. Don't press the little bit red button, I guess, right? But so now that's just the funny thing, though. That's like, back to, like, the fact about whether, like, this movie is a clone or is not. Like, I just think that there's so many things as to those 2 movies that are just so different in terms of, like, A New Hope and Force Awakens. There are, like, once again, things that, like, through lines that are the same in both movies, but at the same time, like, you get the new introductions, you get the people that you get attached to, like Rey and Poe and Finn and Kylo too, just giving you, like, perhaps in some ways a similar version to what Anakin was in the prequels, but probably gonna push the boundaries in different ways. Like, we're just talking about Force Awakens right now, I guess, right? So who knows what's gonna happen in Episode 8 and Episode 9 at this point? But that's just, it's when we're talking about those 2 movies, yeah, like, there are, like, common threads, like common things that are similar, again, with, like, R2 and BB-8 and the similarities between Rey and Luke in a lot of ways, but again, like, we're just you're focused on these characters and you're focused on, in terms of seeing these different people go through it all and get attached to them, because, again, like you even said as well, you needed some inspiration to that. Like, I don't think you get the clone aspect of it, but you needed that because it was what we needed. It was the movie that we needed. We needed to go back to the nostalgia for us, and then we needed to create these new things for these new fans, and in a way, kind of like make it better in some type of way. And I don't know. I still personally think that Force Awakens is better than A New Hope, but to a lot of fans nowadays, it is, and it is their movie. It's their Star Wars movie. So that was the thing about it, is that it took inspiration from it, I think, but also did their own thing at the same time.
Well, yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, I'm a writer myself, and one thing that I love doing, and all the best TV shows and movies do this too, is you set up I've heard it described like this before, and it's such a cool way to put it, is you set up the rules of a game. You set up the rules, and then once everybody is familiar with the rules, it's all the more satisfying and interesting when they see the rules being broken. And I think it was Keegan-Michael Key, I think, described it so well. He described it as walking backwards. And he said, you show everybody your rules and you walk backwards. And by walking backwards, you can see everything sort of from a different perspective. And when you have these rules set up and everybody is walking with you and they know, okay, here's this thing I'm familiar with. Oh, there it is again. And then when they see it again, it's like, oh, here it comes again. They're expecting it, but then you throw them for a loop. And I think that that's exactly what's happening here, because if I was hired to write this new trilogy, I would probably want to do the same thing, is set people up with something that looks familiar and then switch it up. Even this works so well in comedy too, like in running jokes. Like, are you a fan of Community at all, Rob?
Oh yeah, I love Community.
Okay, yeah. Same. So Community does this so well. They have, like, there's that running joke, for example, with Troy and Abed, where they have that
in the morning.
Exactly. Turn each other and they say Troy and Abed in the morning. And what they did on that show was they established this. They had Troy and Abed say that like 5 times, and we learned the rules. We're like, okay, here's the rules. Troy and Abed in the morning. And then what did they start doing? They gave us variations on that theme, and all of a sudden we take delight in that because we are walking backwards and we're watching the rules being broken, and it tickles that part of our brain. So when we see for the 5th time Troy and Abed say Troy and Abed in the morning, it's like, okay, that's cute. They're doing their thing. But then all of a sudden they have this moment where they're like, we have to not act like nerds today, and they look at each other and they go, Troy and Abed being normal. That's freaking hilarious. And it's hilarious because they set up rules, and they set it up to the point where our brain expects it, like the next verse in a song, but then they change the lyrics. And we take, as human beings, we take delight in that. There's a part of our brain that sparks with delight when that happens. I read an article that said it's good for the mind to, if you have like a playlist on your phone, it's good for the mind to put it on random, because every time a new song comes on random, a little piece of, like, you get a little endorphin boost that's like, oh, this one's next, because you're not expecting it. Whereas if you had like listen to the same album every time and you know, okay, here's track 4, I know what track 4 is going to be, you don't get that. It remains stagnant. So you set up the rules, you set up the prequels, you set up the originals, and everybody knows what the rhymes are. Then you bring in 7, and you're like, everybody sees, wow, this looks a lot like A New Hope. This is pretty much like A New Hope 2.0. I can see where these rhymes are going. But no, you saw that sizzle reel at Comic-Con. Even friggin' Mark Hamill didn't see where these rhymes were going, and he's goddamn Luke Skywalker. So they are doing exactly what I would want to do in their situation. They are walking backwards. They are taking us through the rules, and then they are breaking them, and it's going to be only to our benefit. Trust me.
Well, yeah, it's gonna be exciting. Absolutely, seeing where this entire thing goes. Maybe I just don't want to be here in like a year from now again and discussing whether The Last Jedi is a clone of Empire Strikes Back. That might be a little depressing. But regardless, it's up to you guys. What do you guys think? Do you guys think there are similarities to it, or do you think it is an exact clone of A New Hope? So it's up to you guys. And you know what? I should also throw it out. If you guys have ideas for topics that we should discuss ourselves, absolutely throw them in the comments section. James will be reading it. He'll decide. He'll be the ultimate ambassador deciding whether he likes your topics or not. Because again, it's about you guys. You guys should have involvement in this too. Be a part of our discussion, just like we discuss it here. So you guys discuss this topic and give us more to talk about later. So Andrew, yeah, anything else to say to our wonderful fans?
No, I agree with you, man. Give us the feedback. Let us know. I mean, every Star Wars fan has a debate with another Star Wars fan. That's the way it works. So send those debates our way, and then we can take them into the ring and throw chairs at each other.
Yeah,
Hulkamania, brother. So let's bring it on, and we'll keep this train a moving. Until next time, this has been Vote of No Confidence. You are.
I am Rob McDonald.
And I am not Hulk Hogan. But sometimes I wish
Not this
I
time.
Not this time. In another life, brother.
Hey scumbags, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up on our video. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Rebel Scum Podcast, for all the latest videos.